Welcome to the first edition of the Augur Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about 1984. From right to left, we have Sebastian Mejia,
Hello.
Farah Lydia Taleb, and Kelly Brown Fernandez. So we're all aware of George Orwell's book, 1984, and the movie that came after it. But I'll just give a brief summary of what the plot was, or what the plot entailed. So, as we know, it's set in a dystopian version of the year 1984, or what George Orwell presumed it might be like in that year when he was writing. The world has fallen victim to a perpetual war. Government surveillance and propaganda are both very prevalent throughout the story, and we have new ideas like newspeak and thought crime. A couple of the themes that run throughout the novel and the film are totalitarianism, rewriting history, censorship, and the idea of false loyalty, which are all things that we're kind of familiar with on some level or another. So the question that we're going to be focusing on is, are we living in George Orwell's 1984 today?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll start us off by talking a little bit about the surveillance society that was presented in the novel and the way that telescreens in the novel and the film kind of mirror like something like reality TV today. What do you guys think about it?
I agree with that, and I actually think it's quite interesting because it's sort of like the opposite in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So connecting it to reality TV, the contestants in reality TV are willingly showing their lives and letting themselves be, watched by all these people they don't know. And it relates also to social media, something that's very prevalent in our lives, such as like Facebook, Instagram, where we're actively giving out information about ourselves to like people who follow us, who we know, but also like people who follow us and we don't know. So stuff like where we are, what we ate, where we're going, who we're with. So in a way, we have become Big Brother.
No, that's a quite interesting argument, Kelly, but I don't find it to be one-to-one, the movie or in the book with our reality. Now, we fortunately have certain protections for our privacy. So, for example, we know for a fact that the European Union has set legal precedents regarding our online privacy. For example, you can, as a person, you can contact Google and ask for them to take all the information they have of you from the Google search. That's called the right to be forgotten, which was passed by the European Union. Not only that, but since the Cambridge Analytica fiasco in the United States, there have been stricter marketing and data usage laws being passed, meaning that these companies can no longer just stockpile all the information of every page you visit or otherwise. Thankfully, nor can the government. So in that sense, unlike in 1984, we do have certain given protections, and furthermore, we can actually still legislate and ask our lawmakers to further expand those protections, something that just isn't possible in 1984.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I actually didn't know that was a thing. But also, I don't know, I guess you could argue with stuff such as cookies nowadays and social media, it's we're being monitored, people are being monitored based on what they're interested in. So for example, the way cookies work is you get an advertisement based on what you clicked, and the page keeps a log of what you looked at, your interests, and I don't know, I guess all those social medias combined with cookies, they're kind of creating a profile of yourself that, you don't know who has access to that, and as far as I'm concerned, a government could have an access to that.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone else, a hacker or someone like that, What do you guys think about
that? Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you, in the sense that, yes, we don't know, exactly what this information that we're giving out is being used for, but also the government isn't controlling what we think. They're not controlling the things that we look at. So in a sense, we're kind of putting ourselves in this situation. But like you were talking about, Sebastian, in legal terms, countries give their citizens the right to free speech, the freedom to practice their religion, the freedom of expression. So we can see that there have really been legislation being put in place to prevent the idea of 1984 or George Orwell's view of 1984 to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's very interesting, and I agree with you. So like, and connecting back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, so like, you know, and I guess this is also kind of different from Oceania or whatever, that back in 1984 people were only limited to one screen, but nowadays we have like all of these screens around us and we don't really give them a second thought, like our computers, our iPhones, iPads, and now even like watches, and we take them around everywhere with us. So I guess that's also kind of changing the way society is kind of like being monitored, I guess, because it's easy to find where we are. And obviously you could look at that in a negative light, but at the same time it's not so bad because I don't know, for example, if someone goes missing or you know, scenarios like that where someone's life is in danger, it's easier to contact someone because you have these type of stuff like to your reach.
I have to concede, Kelly, that it is very Orwellian in a sense that in the book and movie they have the one screen and the one microphone that's always watching, but now we have multiple and we carry them with us at all times.
Yeah.
So at all times there's more than one way that someone could be always watching, as it's seen in the movie. But to be fair, not everyone has or uses social media or has phones or technology so advanced that it could serve for that purpose. Even then, like, we have the ability and the freedom to disconnect from social media, disconnect ourselves from this technology. That was not a reality in the book. Like, they were always connected against their will. There was always the screen. Like, right now we could turn off our phones, leave them at home. We can do all of that. Even so, we have become so aware of the dangers of an Orwellian society, and we do understand that we do carry these screens, that I find that there have been a movement by younger generations now to maybe limit our use of social media. And even then, we can go as far as not limiting it, but we could really live off the grid. We still have the chance to go in the woods, per se, and totally disconnect ourselves from that world and those dangers.
Yeah. I agree with you in some aspects, but for most of it, I think that social media is just such a prevalent thing in our life that if anything, we're like, it's hard. It will be harder for us to live without it. I mean, of course we could do it, but it will be a big change. And if anything, I guess like the people who have like kind of brought the movement of like disconnecting is mostly older generations, I would argue, but that's for another time. But also, like, I don't know, I mean, connecting the fact that we've grown in like these societies and that's the way we've like been raised. I mean, we're willingly putting ourselves in the spot, and usually, I mean, for things like fame or whatever, now anyone can like get their name known by just posting pictures or like posting a video of them like putting makeup on their face or whatever. And it is almost as if we were like facilitating surveillance, and it's sort of like it's our goal to be known and to be out there, which is it's a little bit concerning, in my opinion.
You know, I understand your concern and I support it. We have indeed given part of our privacy away when we come to accept social media and all of these new modern technological interaction within our lives. However, there is, we can find some comfort, I think, in the fact that we are free still. Like, so far we're still free to request the information that governments have on us. Like, we're free to know and to have copies of it. We're free to ask for the information that enterprises are recollecting. So at least knowledge is power in the sense that we have a freedom to know what's out there.
Yeah.
In 1984, their whole life, everything was trying to be surveillance. They couldn't access it. They couldn't know for what it's being used for. So even if we're actively putting ourselves, let's say, in social media, we do know that, well, it's used for marketing. And while it could be used for most nefarious means, other nefarious means, actually, we do have that control. There is some clarity, there is some transparency, and that can bring at least some comfort to the fact that we are actively putting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
So I think we can bring this kind of to a conclusion now. What we're starting to see is that governments have made efforts to prevent falling into the world that George Orwell has set out for us. Even though there are ways that we are kind of putting this Orwellian society on ourselves, what sets us apart from 1984 is that we're doing it willingly.
Yeah.
And it's like people are trying to be known or be famous the way that you said, but it's not everyday people who don't want that are being forced into being surveilled 24/7. So in conclusion, at least in my opinion, we don't live in George Orwell's 1984.
I have to agree. We don't, at least not yet.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that brings the podcast to an end.
Thank you very much. And tune in next week for second chapter on Back to the Future.